A training hall in downtown Manila fell silent as a Russian combat instructor stood before a gathering of Filipino martial artists, his arms crossed, confidence radiating from every pore. He had traveled thousands of miles to demonstrate what he called the superior efficiency of Russian military combat systems. What he didn't anticipate was meeting someone who would fundamentally challenge everything he thought he knew about fighting. The tension in that room would ignite a confrontation that millions would watch, debate, and remember.
The man at the center of this story was Viktor Sokolov, a former Spetsnaz operative turned international self-defense instructor. With over 15 years of experience training Russian Special Forces units, Viktor had built a reputation across Eastern Europe and parts of Asia for his no-nonsense approach to combat. He specialized in Systema, the Russian martial art developed from ancient Cossack fighting methods and refined through centuries of warfare. His teaching philosophy was simple and direct. There were no flowery movements, no traditional ceremonies, just raw effectiveness based on physics, anatomy, and the brutal realities of survival. He had conducted seminars in 12 countries, always emphasizing that modern combat systems grounded in military application were inherently more practical than what he viewed as outdated traditional martial arts.
Viktor arrived in the Philippines with a mission to expand his training network throughout Southeast Asia. He had scheduled a demonstration at a prominent martial arts facility in Manila, a venue known for hosting practitioners from various disciplines. The organizers had advertised the event widely, attracting everyone from Brazilian jiu-jitsu enthusiasts to mixed martial arts fighters, all curious to see the mysterious Russian system that claimed to turn ordinary people into capable defenders within months rather than years. Viktor's presentation was scheduled to run for 3 hours, covering everything from breathing techniques to knife defense, from multiple attacker scenarios to the psychological aspects of combat. He prepared his materials meticulously, confident that his scientific approach would impress even the most skeptical observers.
Among the 70 people who gathered that Saturday morning was a man named Ramon Torres, a master instructor of Filipino Kali with over 30 years of experience. Ramon was known throughout the Philippines as a guardian of traditional fighting arts, someone who had dedicated his life to preserving and teaching the blade and stick techniques that had been passed down through generations of Filipino warriors. He ran a small training center in Quezon City, where students learned not just physical techniques, but the philosophy, history, and cultural significance of Filipino martial arts. Ramon rarely attended seminars by visiting instructors, preferring to focus on his own students. But something about Viktor's promotional materials had caught his attention. The Russian instructor's claims about the superiority of modern military systems over traditional arts struck a nerve, and Ramon decided to observe for himself.
Viktor began his demonstration with characteristic boldness. He spoke about how Systema emphasized natural movement, relaxation under pressure, and the ability to adapt to any situation without relying on memorized techniques. He explained that many traditional martial arts were designed for different eras, for different weapons, for different social contexts, and that clinging to these ancient methods in the modern world was impractical at best and dangerous at worst. He demonstrated breathing exercises that he claimed could help practitioners remain calm during violent encounters, showed footwork drills designed to maintain balance while evading attacks, and performed weapon disarms that drew appreciative nods from several audience members. His confidence grew with each technique, his voice becoming more emphatic as he contrasted his scientific approach with what he termed the ritualistic limitations of traditional systems. Then, Viktor made a statement that would change the trajectory of the entire day. He mentioned Filipino martial arts specifically, stating that while stick fighting might have been useful centuries ago when blades and clubs were common weapons, modern self-defense required modern solutions. He suggested that the elaborate patterns and forms practiced in arts like arnis and Kali were more theatrical than practical, designed more for demonstration than real combat effectiveness. He acknowledged that these arts had historical value, but questioned their relevance in contemporary situations where threats involved firearms, multiple attackers, or the chaos of urban violence. Several Filipino practitioners in the audience shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. Ramon sat perfectly still, his expression neutral, but his attention absolutely focused. During the question period, Ramon raised his hand. He stood slowly, introducing himself with characteristic humility, mentioning his 3 decades of training and teaching, but emphasizing that he came as a student, eager to learn and understand. He asked Viktor a simple question about the application of Systema principles against a trained knife fighter, someone who understood angles, timing, and the commitment required for effective blade work. Viktor responded enthusiastically, calling Ramon to the front and offering to demonstrate exactly how Systema's principles of relaxation and redirection would neutralize even a skilled knife attack. He handed Ramon a rubber training knife and positioned himself in a relaxed stance, breathing steadily, projecting absolute confidence. What happened next lasted less than 30 seconds, but would be analyzed frame by frame thousands of times online. Ramon moved with a fluidity that seemed almost casual, his footwork eating up distance in irregular patterns that made Viktor's attempts at evasion constantly half a step behind. The rubber knife appeared from unexpected angles, high then low, diagonal then straight, each movement flowing into the next with no telegraphing, no wasted motion. Viktor attempted to apply his defensive principles, trying to redirect Ramon's energy, but the Filipino master's attacks didn't come in the linear, committed fashion that Systema counters were designed to address. Instead, Ramon's blade work demonstrated what centuries of Filipino martial arts had perfected: the ability to threaten from multiple angles simultaneously, to change targets mid-motion, to use rhythm and broken rhythm to overwhelm defensive structures. Within seconds, Viktor had accumulated what would have been 7 potentially fatal cuts. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. To Viktor's credit, he didn't make excuses. He stepped back, clearly shaken, but attempting to maintain composure. He suggested they try again, this time with him attacking and Ramon defending. Ramon agreed quietly, handing over the training knife. Viktor took a deep breath, centered himself using his Systema breathing techniques, and launched what he believed was an efficient, committed knife attack. Ramon's response was almost invisible in its speed. He moved offline at the last possible moment, his empty hand intercepting Viktor's weapon arm at the wrist, while his other hand struck Viktor's elbow, using the Russian's own forward momentum to hyperextend the joint and send the knife clattering to the floor. The entire sequence took perhaps 2 seconds. Viktor found himself off balance, controlled, and completely disarmed without Ramon appearing to use any significant force. The demonstration had taken an unexpected turn, and the energy in the room had completely shifted. Viktor stood in the center of the mat, perspiration beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning, while Ramon waited patiently a few steps away. The Russian instructor's carefully constructed presentation had been dismantled in under a minute of actual contact.
Some of the audience members were recording on their phones, capturing what they sensed was a significant moment. Viktor could have ended things there, could have thanked Ramon and moved on with his seminar, but his pride and his genuine curiosity pushed him forward. He asked if they could continue, perhaps exploring empty-hand applications. Ramon nodded, his demeanor remaining respectful, but his readiness apparent to anyone who had trained seriously. They engaged several more times over the next 20 minutes, exploring different scenarios. Each exchange revealed the depth of Ramon's understanding and the limitations of Viktor's assumptions. When Viktor attempted to use Systema's signature relaxation and minimal resistance approach, Ramon's strikes found openings that shouldn't have existed, exploiting the very relaxation that was supposed to make Viktor elusive. When Viktor tried to apply locks and controls drawn from Systema's grappling component, Ramon's understanding of leverage and timing allowed him to flow out of positions that would have trapped less experienced practitioners. The Filipino master demonstrated how Kali's empty-hand techniques, developed in parallel with weapon training, incorporated an understanding of angles, trapping, and simultaneous offense and defense that matched and often exceeded the principles Viktor had been teaching. The most striking moment came when Viktor asked about the practical application of what he had previously dismissed as elaborate patterns. Ramon explained patiently that what looked like choreographed forms to the uninitiated were actually repositories of tactical principles, each movement encoding specific solutions to common attack vectors. He demonstrated how a simple pattern from his system contained responses to straight punches, hooks, grabs, and weapon attacks, all organized in a sequence that trained muscle memory while teaching strategic thinking. He showed how the footwork that Viktor had criticized as overly complex actually created angles that made simultaneous defense and offense possible. How the stick patterns developed coordination and timing that transferred directly to empty-hand combat. How the cultural transmission of these techniques through generations had refined them in ways that purely modern systems, lacking that crucible of time and experience, couldn't match. Viktor's worldview was undergoing a fundamental challenge. He had built his reputation on the idea that modern military combat systems represented the pinnacle of fighting effectiveness, that everything older was necessarily inferior. Yet here was a traditional art, preserved in a form that Viktor had confidently dismissed as theatrical, demonstrating superiority in every meaningful metric. The techniques worked, the principles held up under pressure. The practitioner was clearly capable of dominating the engagement despite Viktor's extensive training and real-world experience. The Russian instructor found himself at a crossroads, facing a choice between defending his ego and embracing the humbling opportunity to learn something profound. To the surprise of many observers, Viktor made a choice that would ultimately define his character more than any demonstration of technique. He stopped the exchange, bowed to Ramon with genuine respect, and spoke words that the room would remember. He acknowledged that his understanding had been limited, that his dismissal of traditional Filipino arts had been based on ignorance rather than knowledge, and that he had learned more in the past half hour than he had in months of teaching. He asked Ramon if he would be willing to share his knowledge, to explain the principles underlying what Viktor had just experienced. The tension in the room transformed into something else entirely, a collective sense of witnessing not just a confrontation, but a genuine moment of growth and connection.
Ramon responded with characteristic grace, inviting Viktor to his training center and offering to exchange knowledge. He explained that all martial arts, when practiced with integrity and tested against reality, had valuable lessons to teach. He suggested that Systema and Kali rather than being competitors for supremacy, represented different approaches to solving similar problems, each with strength that could inform the other. The two men spent the next hour in dialogue, Viktor asking questions with genuine curiosity, Ramon answering with patience and detail, both men demonstrating a level of mutual respect that transcended the earlier confrontation. The other practitioners in the room watched this exchange with fascination, many of them taking notes, recording key points, recognizing that they were witnessing something rare in martial arts circles.
The footage of that initial encounter spread rapidly online. Within days, multiple camera angles had been compiled, analyzed, and shared across social media platforms. Martial arts forums erupted in debate, with practitioners from dozens of styles weighing in on what the exchange revealed about traditional versus modern systems, about the importance of testing claims against skilled resistance, about the dangers of dismissing arts without genuine understanding. Some viewers focused on the technical aspects, breaking down Ramon's angles and timing. Others emphasized the philosophical dimension, the question of how we evaluate effectiveness and what role cultural preservation should play in martial arts training. Still others celebrated Viktor's humility, his willingness to acknowledge error and embrace learning, seeing in his response a model for how martial artists should approach cross-training and exposure to unfamiliar systems.
Viktor ended up staying in the Philippines for 3 additional weeks, training daily at Ramon's center and documenting his learning process. He posted regular updates on social media, openly discussing how his assumptions had been challenged and what he was discovering about Filipino martial arts. He demonstrated combinations that blended Systema's breathing and relaxation principles with Kali's angular footwork and simultaneous defense and offense, creating hybrid approaches that surprised and impressed both Russian and Filipino martial arts communities. His willingness to be vulnerable, to show himself as a student rather than always positioning himself as an expert, actually enhanced his reputation rather than diminishing it. Students at his own centers in Russia and Eastern Europe began requesting instruction in Filipino arts, seeking out qualified teachers, wanting to understand what their instructor had encountered in Manila. Ramon's response to the attention was characteristically measured. He gave several interviews, always emphasizing respect for all legitimate martial arts, always redirecting focus from individual personalities to the arts themselves. He explained that Filipino martial arts had survived centuries precisely because they were tested continuously, refined through actual combat, preserved by practitioners who understood that effectiveness was the ultimate standard. He spoke about the importance of cultural context, how understanding where an art comes from and what problems it was designed to solve provides insight into how it works and when it's applicable. He warned against the tendency to declare any single system superior, arguing that all arts have limitations and that the wise practitioner remains humble, continues training, and tests understanding against skilled partners rather than building reputation on untested claims.
The encounter fundamentally changed both men. Viktor restructured his teaching to include more emphasis on the limitations of any single system, incorporated exchanges with traditional martial artists into his seminar format, and became an advocate for cross-training and respectful dialogue between different approaches. His honesty about his initial dismissiveness and his subsequent learning process made him a more effective teacher, as students appreciated his authenticity and his willingness to model growth. Ramon found himself with an expanded platform to share Filipino martial arts with practitioners who might never have sought them out otherwise. The Russian community's interest in Kali grew significantly, with multiple schools opening throughout Eastern Europe, many directly crediting Viktor's documentation of his training with Ramon as their inspiration.
The incident raised important questions about how martial arts knowledge is preserved and transmitted in the modern era. Traditional systems like Filipino Kali carry centuries of accumulated wisdom, techniques refined through actual combat across generations. Modern military systems like Systema incorporate scientific principles and address contemporary threats. Rather than viewing these as competing approaches where one must be superior, the encounter between Viktor and Ramon demonstrated that both have value, that practitioners can learn from multiple sources, and that genuine testing against skilled resistance should humble us all. The willingness to challenge our assumptions, to step outside our comfort zones, to acknowledge when our understanding is incomplete, these are the marks of a true martial artist, regardless of style or system. The video of their first exchange continues to circulate, regularly resurfacing in discussions about martial arts effectiveness, cultural preservation, and the importance of respect in training. New practitioners discover it each year, using it as a starting point for exploring both Russian and Filipino martial arts. Experienced martial artists reference it when discussing the importance of testing claims rather than accepting them based on reputation or marketing. Viktor and Ramon themselves have remained in contact, occasionally training together when their schedules permit, always approaching their exchanges with the same spirit of mutual respect and genuine curiosity that characterized their transformation from confrontation to collaboration. The lesson extends beyond martial arts into broader questions about how we approach knowledge, expertise, and cultural traditions. It's easy to dismiss what we don't understand, to assume that our preferred approach is inherently superior, to build walls between ourselves and different perspectives. The courage to step into the unknown, to test our beliefs against reality, to acknowledge when we're wrong and learn from those who know better, these are universally valuable qualities. Viktor demonstrated them by accepting Ramon's challenge and then genuinely learning from the experience. Ramon demonstrated them by sharing his knowledge generously rather than using his advantage to humiliate. Together, they created a moment that transcended a simple technical exchange to become a lesson in human beings can grow through honest engagement with difference. For anyone interested in martial arts, self-defense, or the broader questions of how we preserve traditional knowledge while adapting to modern contexts, the encounter between Viktor Sokolov and Ramon Torres offers profound insights. It reminds us that effectiveness must be tested rather than assumed, that cultural traditions often contain wisdom accumulated over generations, that humility and openness to learning are more valuable than any technique. The Russian instructor who flew to Manila, confident in his modern system's superiority, left 3 weeks later as a student of an art he had dismissed, forever changed by his willingness to step beyond his assumptions. The Filipino master, who could have used the opportunity for ego and dominance, instead chose to teach, to share, to build bridges between communities. Their story continues to inspire thousands of martial artists worldwide, a testament to what becomes possible when we approach difference with respect and genuine curiosity, rather than competition and dismissal.